Good afternoon, Tucson. This is Jim Holway, and we are going to do a bit of a internet town hall chat here. So I welcome you all for joining us. And if this is your first time on here, if you're on YouTube, and you'll see that in your upper right corner, there's a place where you can open up a chat box. And if you open that up, you can submit some questions to us. So I look forward to having you join us and submit some questions. We also, through some Facebook posts and some tweets, have gotten some questions submitted that way. And so you'll see in the chat box every now and then folks who are helping me out, Jamie in particular, is posting some of the questions that have already come in that we'll insert in the call as we go along. But again, hoping we'll get a lot of calls from you. So we have just initiated this series of internet town hall talks. We did a conversation this morning with folks from Flagstaff, and did one a couple days ago just generally about issues before the commission. So over the remainder of the campaign, we're going to make a practice of continuing to do this. It's my belief that a key part of campaigns is to be talking about the issues, to be getting debates, for candidates to be getting out and engaging with the public throughout the state, hearing your issues, hearing your concerns, giving you a chance to meet us. And unfortunately, that's not been happening as much as it should have. If we just look at the Corporation Commission debate, there were 5 different candidate forums scheduled. Now, the Clean Elections legally requires the Clean Elections candidates to come. So we had a half-an-hour debate. And if you go to the public television station, Channel 8, in the Horizon show in Phoenix, you can get a link to that one debate that has occurred. But my Republican opponents have been refusing to appear at any public forums. They've been refusing to talk to the media. Actually, I went up and talked to the Tea Party in Payson last night, and they were invited to come as well and refused to come. So it looks to me like the only way we're going to get a message out is just get it out on our own. So that's the purpose of this, and we invite your questions. Because I think, like I said, the elections need to be about having these kind of conversations. So just a bit about the mechanics here. We have a 90-second delay from when I talk to when you hear it. So if you're sending me questions, by the time I get that question, I'm already 2 minutes ahead. So give me a chance to get to your question and get back to you as we adjust to that. And the other thing, like we said, click on the chat and you can enter a chat, and then we will see those questions coming in. So for instance, Karen, I know you had submitted something through Facebook. We had that ready to go, but I see you're on there live now. So we'll get to that question in just a second. What I wanted to do was just give a very brief introduction for those of you who are not familiar with the commission, and then dive into your questions. So the commission very well may be the elected office that's going to have the greatest impact on your day-to-day lives over the next number of years. Certainly, it may be the greatest impact on your pocketbook. So the commission, we could call it the Arizona Public Utilities Commission. It would make it a little clearer what they do, but they regulate the electric, water, sewer, natural gas, and telephone utilities. Now, for those of you in Tucson, many of you get your water from Tucson Water. The commission regulates the private company. So they regulate Tucson Electric Power and set their rates. The city of Tucson regulates and controls Tucson Water. They do not have to come to the commission. So, but about 15% of Arizonans are served their water by private water companies, in which case the commission is the authority that manages them. So you've got 5 commissioners. In this election, you're electing 2 of us. You have 2 Republicans running, and I am one of the 2 Democrats running. The other Democrat is Sandra Kennedy, who has previously served on the commission. And it's a statewide race. So we are traveling all over the state and getting out and, hopefully hearing from all of you. So just briefly myself, I have 35 years of experience working on land use, water, energy, growth issues throughout the Southwest, and have been in Tucson and Phoenix and Arizona for 23 years now, working on these issues. And started my career actually working on energy policy briefly for a year or so, and then most of the rest of my career, like I say, has been water and land use issues. I was for a decade the assistant director for the Arizona Department of Water Resources. I went over to your rival school for a few years, Arizona State University, as they were starting their sustainability programs, and helped with that. And then for the last 5 years, I was working with Sonoran Institute, a group that started in Tucson 23 years ago now. I spent 5 years with them and just recently stepped down from my position there to campaign full time. So if there's other questions, I'm happy to talk more about my background. But for me, there's a number of reasons I'm running. The primary one is I care very much about how we manage water and energy to make sure that Arizona will be sustainable well into the future. That's how I spent my whole career, and I'm running for the commission because that will give me a way to give back to our state, to represent you and continue doing this. Another key issue for me is, as I'm hearing from many of you, I'm very troubled, very pained by the degree to which politics has become so divisive. We've lost that art of compromise. We've lost the art of finding the middle ground and coming together to invest in our future. And I believe if more folks like myself that don't come in with a particular ideology, don't come in trying to launch a political career, but just come in because we want to see the best for our state, we can work with all of you and find the pragmatic solutions and the common ground and move us forward. So those are my priorities. That's the key of why I'm running. So let's see what we have in terms of questions here. Okay, Barbara from Tucson submitted a good general question to get us started here. So what are the key issues the commission has to deal with? There's a couple I'll highlight, and then again, we'll see what else comes up through questions. But the most important need for the commission to address is ensuring that we are going to continue to have reliable and affordable water and power. That determines our quality of life. That is the fuel that feeds our economy so we can continue to do well as a state. There's nothing that's more important in terms of resource management than that. And for the commission, what you need is we need to make sure that they are looking far into the future, that they're understanding how our challenges are going to change, because they will change. Our climate is changing. The nature of our economy is changing. We're growing, and the nature of that growth. But these are also all issues that are uncertain. So what we need to make sure we're doing is investing in policies, investing in infrastructure that will be flexible across the variety of futures, and that we will continue to have reliable supplies. To me, that is far and away the key issue. Some of the other hot topics at the moment are solar energy. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to open electricity markets up to competition? How do we deal with the drought and the reports we're getting about decreasing water availability and shortages on the Colorado River? Those are some of the biggest keys. And then and another one that I imagine there'll be some questions about, if not, I'll inject a few comments later on, is how are we funding campaigns, and what's that doing to the degree to which the commission is representing you, the people of Arizona. So Karen, why don't we go to Karen's question, and Karen's in Pinal County, and the question that Karen had asked is, what about multinational corporations and the degree to which we have foreign companies coming in and buying up some of our water companies and buying some of our electric companies? And Karen has a concern with that from the point of view that she expressed over Facebook of, one is just the privatization of these resources, that they're going from, say, public to private. And if it's foreign investment, are they going to necessarily be managing those investments in a way that takes care of Arizonans? And then just in general, if you have a private entity, their obligation is to the stockholders, not necessarily to their customers. So a couple of thoughts on that. And this obviously is an issue for you in Tucson, because it was just, I guess, in August that the Tucson Electric Power, that the sale was completed to, I'm just reminding myself, but who bought Unisource, Fortis. So Fortis is now the holding company that owns Tucson Electric Power as well as Unisource. It's one of the, I think maybe is the largest utility company in Canada. So we now have a Canadian company that's owning Tucson Electric Power. I know Karen is served by EPCOR, which is a water company. It's actually, EPCOR is owned by the city of Edmonton, Canada, and it's their energy utility, but they also own water companies throughout the state. And so I think clearly we are seeing this in many areas of the country. You're increasingly seeing this. So a few thoughts I'd share. One is the issue of who's able to own a corporation in the U.S. and whether they can be a foreign corporation or they need to be a U.S. corporation or local. That's clearly an issue that's beyond the authority of the Corporation Commission. But I think what it does point to is it increases the importance of the commission. I mean, there's no reason that these companies can't do just as good a job as a local company would do, But I do believe we lose something when we don't have local ownership anymore. We don't have people who are in our community in charge of those companies making the decisions. So you lose somewhat of a corporate citizen there. Again, I believe that makes the role of the commission more important, because it's the job of the commission to make sure that Arizona's interests are being protected in the decisions these companies are making. So that's why you have a corporation commission. In the case of some of these companies, I think they have a reputation for doing a pretty good job of leaving local management in place. So again, we still have that, and that's good. The issue of the privatization of the resources, it is one that concerns me. To be honest, I'm not so concerned about a private company owning our electric or our water system. Again, that's why we have the Corporation Commission to manage it. And those communities that want to own their own utilities sometimes started them. In other cases, they are able to buy them out if they want to and they have sufficient resources. But we have a number of communities in Arizona that don't want government controlling these and would rather see it in private hands. And again, I think that's why we need the commission to regulate it. But what does concern me some is when we increasingly see our natural resources being owned in the private market. So for instance, water. Typically we think of water as, for instance, our groundwater. Our groundwater is held in a public trust for all of us. It's not really owned by anyone, and it serves all of us. Well, we've set up systems now where we create credits for water that's put in the ground, recharge credits. And in many cases, private investors are buying these up because they see future markets. This idea that we have speculation going on issues like our future water supplies is, to me, of some concern. And it's just something we're going to have to continue to carefully manage. Okay, let me see what other questions that we have that have come in here. Let's see. So Keith from Oro Valley submitted a question of asking whether I supported solar. I am running as a pro-solar candidate. I believe that Arizona has an enormous opportunity to be a leader on solar energy, and I believe with the industry and the location of Tucson, you have a major ability to capitalize on this. If you give the optics expertise and research that already is at U of A, one of the world leaders on optics, I think if you combine that with other parts of the University of Arizona's research agenda, one of the tours I managed to have was folks from Tucson Electric Power took me out to see the U of A Tech Park, just past where the Irvington plant is in South Tucson. And there, the university and the utility have collaborated on testing 7 different utility scale solar technologies to see how applicable they are to the Southwest. Our rooftop solar and our utility scale solar to produce energy for us. That's good. I want to see more of it. But this kind of opportunity for research to drive innovation and creativity will build an economy for Arizona. So it's about building a solar economy. So back to just in summary to Bob's question, very strong supporter of solar. I believe we have an opportunity to be a world leader in solar. We need to capitalize on that opportunity. And at the same time, today we get about 2% of our power from solar energy. Probably about 1% of our homes have rooftop solar. We clearly can have much more than that, and we should have much more than that. And there are quite a few things the commission can do to encourage it. One of my concerns is the current commission is discouraging it. They're increasing the fees, what are called net metering fees on solar, and they have taken away some of the incentives for commercial entities to put solar in place. And one of my commitments is I will get us back on track. I'll make sure we're supporting those investments. So Bob, Keith, I guess that was. Thank you very much for that question. So Bob had another question. This is one that Jamie has forwarded for me, but this is, Bob posted this on Facebook just about 20 minutes before we started here. So Bob's an individual who's adding solar to his home and had just heard about the imposition of solar taxes, and he wanted to know about that. The other thing Bob expressed was opposition to taxes on solar, as well as any taxes or restrictions on the ability to do water reclamation, reuse water on site. So actually, let me address that first, because that's actually an area where Tucson has done a lot. Tucson has been a real leader in rainwater harvesting. The Watershed Group, that's a consulting group out of Tucson, has done a lot of work to advance this. There have been ordinances put in place, a lot of work that's gone on. And so this is something we need to continue doing. This really isn't an issue that comes before the commission, but clearly is something that is in the long-term interest of the state and an area where Arizona has leadership. And in general, I believe just as we can be a leader on solar energy, Arizona can be a leader on water and energy conservation and efficiency. And there are things the commission can do to help facilitate and encourage that, both across water and energy. But specifically to Bob's question about the solar tax, there's a couple things people refer to as the solar tax. One is this net metering fee I talked about. So the way net metering works is if you put solar on your roof at night, on cloudy days, middle of the summer when your air conditioners are running, you're still drawing power in from the utility, from the grid. You're connected to the grid. And so your meter, it's spinning and adding up those charges just like it always did. Well, then in the middle of an afternoon like today, in the fall or the spring, you undoubtedly are probably producing more power than you use, and you're sending that power out and your neighbors get to use it, and you literally spin the meter backwards. And at the end of the month, you pay a fee based on your net use. And chances are in the spring, you have produced more power than you use. Clearly in the summer in Arizona, you're probably using a lot more than you're producing. So that's net metering. There's a whole lot of details that if folks want to ask questions, we can get more into, but there was a controversy, and the end result of that was in November, the Commission for Arizona Public Service, not for Tucson yet, but typically the other utilities do follow, but for Arizona Public Service, they established a fee of 70 cents a kilowatt, an average of $4 or $5 a system. There's two things they did. They established that fee, and the other thing that concerns me is they also came in and said, we can change this fee anytime we want. We're not guaranteeing what it'll be, and if you're an investor, that's problematic. So the one thing that Tucson Electric Power has done, if you've noticed, if you've gone to Tucson Electric Power since I think maybe March of this year to install a solar system or get permitted for it, they have made you sign a disclosure saying they don't have a fee today, but the commission could establish one in the future, and if they do, you will be subject to it. So I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned that if we continue to send an all-Republican commission, that we are going to see further restrictions on solar, and I will work to stop those restrictions so we can continue to advance it. The other thing that is directly a tax on solar applies to folks who lease your solar systems, and 60 to 80% of people in Arizona do lease your systems. So this is not through the Corporation Commission. It's there's a bill that was passed that basically said if you have a solar system, we won't add it to the value of your house. We won't put that into your property taxes. The State Department of Revenue came out with an interpretation last year and said, if you own the system, that is the law. You are not going to be taxed on the value of that system. But if you leased it, the entity that owns the system will get taxed. So that, for many people in Arizona, that could be Solar City, it could be Sunrun, or any one of a number of local Arizona firms that hold those leases, or third-party banks. They will have a tax. And in almost all cases, those leases were written such that if any taxes were implied, they will get passed back to you, the homeowner, the resident. So that's a tax that could add up to, $100, $150, $200 a year on your system. The solar industry is appealing it. There will be efforts in the legislature to reverse that. My position has been that, look, we created this exemption to give an incentive for solar. We should still give that incentive. The tax is wrong, and it's also unfair. Why would we tax people who lease a system but not tax those who have the financial wherewithal to flock their system? That to me just strikes me as unfair. And so, Bob, I will support your efforts to make sure that those taxes do not get put in place. So let's see. Question from, I guess Karen was having another question. Let me see if I need to pull that up on my screen here. So Karen asks, what are my thoughts on the ACC allowing water companies to charge customers for incremental system improvements without formal rate cases? And so this is something that's called SIB, the System Improvement Benefit. The basic idea here is typically for a water company, and it's the same for power companies, when they want a rate increase, they have to come to the Corporation Commission and have a rate hearing. And these are fairly complicated, fairly expensive, fairly involved processes. But whenever you need a rate increase because you've had increased costs, this is how you do it. And so usually the commission's hearing 50 of these perhaps a year from the 400 water and sewer companies. And the power companies, there's less of them, they're bigger, but they come in less frequently. So what happens in a rate case is the utility comes in and says, they could come in and ask for a rate decrease. That doesn't happen very often. Usually it's a rate increase. So they're coming in and saying, here, they open up the books and they say, here are all of our costs, and we need to have a rate increase to cover them. And so what the commission does is they pour through the books in detail and they determine what is the capital investment that this utility has, and they deserve a rate of return on that. And typically they decide that the rate of return that should be allowed is around a 10% profit. And then they have expenses. They've bought fuel, they've bought chemicals. You don't get a rate of return on that, but you get to recover your costs for it. So that all gets put together, and that's part of what determines what the rate is going to be. The standard that's usually followed is before you can ask for something to be in your rate base and get a return, you have to prove that it's used and useful, it's in place, and then you have to come in and have one of these hearings. So the program that Karen's asked about is one that has just recently been started for some of the private water companies, the System Improvement Benefit. And what it says is for a fairly restricted list of activities, fixing leaks, fixing meters, it's a list of 5 or 6 different types of infrastructure improvements. The company can go ahead, and if the improvement is sort of approved as done right, they don't have to come in for a rate case. They can just add it right into their rates. And so this is something that the staff had recommended get included, and the commission had started to include. The Residential Utility Consumers Office is called RUCO. RUCO is the entity whose job it is to defend and protect the average customer by intervening on your behalf at the commission. They have sued the commission. They have said, we do not believe this is constitutional. And in a number of cases, we have consumers and ratepayers who have said, hey, I feel like I'm being charged too much. I feel like the company shouldn't be able to increase my rates on a regular basis. They should have to go through the formal rate hearing. So that's the basic issue. There is a lawsuit pending on that. And now the town of Fountain Hills as well has entered a lawsuit to challenge this. My view on this is I step back from it a little bit. And what I say is the role of the commission is to keep your rates as low as possible while making sure you have a quality service. And so the question I ask is, can we structure this in a way that we reduce the cost of having to come in for rate hearings, we reduce the frequency of it, and we perhaps don't have a holding cost for the interest that the company's going to get to recover if they're waiting 3 or 4 years, if they can do these right away. So I believe that if done right, this program could be to everyone's benefit, but that's the challenge. It has to be done right. So far, it has not been. Unfortunately, what the commission did in the case of an Arizona water company rate case is they came in and they said, well, normally we would give a 10% rate of return, but what staff recommended was a 10.5% rate of return because they knew there were a lot of infrastructure investments. That was the recommendation. Well, the commission looked at it and they said, well, we're going to give them this system improvement benefit program so that they can start collecting money right away for these costs. And they also gave them the 10.5% rate increase. So they basically gave them twice what staff recommended. That's clearly wrong, and I think that's part of what's led to the opposition to the program. But this is highly controversial, so I appreciate the question. It's clearly an issue as a commissioner I will need to deal with. And what I assure you is, to the degree we allow this, we will do it in a way that you are saving costs, not increasing costs. And there is the ability to reject expenses that seem inappropriate. So, Karen, thank you for the question, and that's certainly something that's going to remain controversial. So we have a question from Heather. Let me get to it on my screen here. Having troubles moving my computer around here for the moment. So actually, can you show it to me on yours, Jamie? Because I am not finding it on mine. So Heather's question is, okay. So Heather from the University of Arizona submitted a question via Facebook and saying, with Tucson being a university town, what benefits do you see the university gaining from research into alternative energies? Heather, great question, and I think this is enormous. This is one of my main reasons for saying that Arizona can and should be a leader in solar energy and both energy and water conservation efficiency. U of A has a lot of expertise here. ASU has a lot of expertise. NAU has a lot as well. And we can bring our universities together with our utility companies, with our cities and towns, with our state agencies, and we can identify what some of these key needs are. And in my mind, there is no question that the research that is needed for renewable energy, for water, to look at how do we manage these resources in an area that's growing rapidly, that's becoming increasingly urban, that is arid, and perhaps has a climate that's changing and may become more arid and drier. If we can solve those challenges in Arizona, not only do we have a better lifestyle and a better economy, these are the challenges the whole globe faces. I mean, we're going to add 3 billion people, that's the projections, another 3 billion people worldwide. That means we're building the equivalent of a new city of a million people every several months. I mean, it's an enormous level of growth. And this is an opportunity for Arizona to be the leader in innovation, research, and development through our universities as well as others, and bring jobs to Arizona that are producing the technology and the policies and the techniques that we can export. So it's an enormous opportunity. It's one of the main things I think we need to seize within the Corporation Commission. So let's see, what other questions do we have? Okay, so yeah, Nancy had submitted a question earlier on Facebook about smart meters, and so let me talk a bit about that. This is a question that comes up a lot as I travel the state. It's of a significant concern to a number of folks. So typically, you know, if we go back in time, the kind of electric meter everybody had on their house, you just had a dial there, and it would just be spinning. It's called an analog meter, and the electric company would have to come out once a month or so and physically read the meter. What we're moving to is meters that are called smart meters. And this can mean a lot of different things, but I'll be simplistic about it for the moment. This is a meter that probably, instead of just doing a cumulative use, might actually be tracking your use hour by hour or even in more smaller increments of time, and then is digitally sending that signal back to the utility so they don't have to come read the meter. So there are a couple advantages depending how you want to look at it. One is a much more accurate read on our energy use, which will allow us to manage our energy supply and demand better, as well as not paying the cost of the meter reading. There are a number of concerns being raised, and I'm sure I won't hit all of them here, but the key ones that I hear about as I've traveled the state is, number one, there's a concern about privacy of information. The way these meters work, is there the ability for either your neighbor or for someone else to know what your energy use is? Second is, you know, it's what I'll call the big brother concern. Do we really want the electric utility to know this and to be able to potentially in the future, I don't think anyone's doing it today, but potentially in the future, use these to also be able to manage some of our high energy users in our households? Third is that what you hear the most about is a public health concern, that there is some type of a wireless signal, and again, it's going to vary by the kind of meter, but some type of a wireless signal that could be akin to what you have in a cell phone, a microwave, a baby monitor, that is being used to send this signal. And there's a debate that goes on as to whether these only fire up every now and then to send the signal, or whether it's an almost constant broadcast. And again, it probably varies by the kind of meter. But there is some evidence that there are significant health impacts. There's also studies that says there aren't impacts. So we have a controversy here that needs to be dealt with. And I think we have a lot of people who have personal anecdotal stories of them having personally felt health impacts from these meters, and when they moved them, they stopped. There also, in some cases, are what I would call more general public safety concerns, that are there places where these meters have led to fire risks. And is that the meter itself, or is there a problem with the wiring? But either way, we've got a variety of issues that we need to deal with. From my point of view, what I often will say as I talk about this is, I do believe, are going to need to more actively manage our energy demands and supplies and our load. And I believe this is going to require that we have what some folks might call a smart grid, and the ability to, we're heavily reliant on solar, which we aren't today, but many of us would like to be. We're heavily reliant on solar, and a cloud bank just passed over, and we had a dip. Well, would we rather have to fire up a bunch of natural gas generators, or would we like to have the ability that we could we could shut air conditioners down for 5 minutes and cycle through where that happened. And I'm not saying that's what we do, but it's just an example of the kind of things we could do that I believe we're going to need to do to integrate renewable supplies into our grid and manage it more efficiently, so we reduce the need for more pollution from more power sources. So I believe we're going to need that. Does that require a smart meter? I don't know that it requires a smart meter, but it will require some kind of technology. And so what I said is, I think we need to go down that path, but what we need to do is make sure that we are dealing with the questions about the health and the public safety and the privacy issues, and we need to solve those. The other issue that comes up is, in many cases, individuals are allowed to opt out. I would continue those programs. I think any individual who, for whatever reason, more sensitive to health, more concerned about it, doesn't have the right location to put it, if they want to opt out, we need to allow that. And then we need to do it in such a way that it's affordable, that the utility company isn't charging an exorbitant fee to come out every month and read a meter because you opted out of the program. So those are the variety of issues. It's a significant concern. And what I've indicated to people is I have not had the opportunity to do the level of research to understand everything that's out there on this issue, but I'll continue to look at that and make sure at the commission that we're asking the hard questions and we're getting the answers we need to make sure we're moving forward in an appropriate manner on this. So yeah, just a couple more quick questions. We wanted to go about half an hour, and we're about there. Jamie, you've been watching more closely than me. Is there a particular question that you would highlight that's come in that we should try to get to?
Well, Karen asked another question. Is it possible to reverse the policy pass-through tax increase that the commission passed last year? So
we talked a bit about the net metering. This was another a question that had come in from a couple folks in terms of we established this 70 cent per kilowatt hour net metering fee, and the short answer to this would be the commission can change it at any time. They can raise the fee, they can lower the fee, they can get rid of the fee. This is an issue on which the commission has complete discretion, and I think it's one of the reasons that it's important for everyone to really pay attention to the question. So, let's talk a bit more about a more general water question. So Henry submitted a question via email asking, does the ACC have any responsibility for making sure we have a secure water supply? So the role of the Corporation Commission on Water is to regulate the private water companies that 15%, 10 to 15% of the state gets our water from. So it's not the entity that manages the Colorado River. It's not the legislature with the large policy issues, but it is one of the partners in the state that has a role in this. And so commissioners can take a lead role in making sure the state's addressing its issues. But very specifically, there are things that matter for the private water company. So every water company in the state has to do a drought plan, a water adequacy, water supply plan, and a conservation plan. And so one of the things the commission can do is make sure that the utilities have the resources to be doing a good comprehensive job on these. We need these to be serious plans. We need them to really consider the challenges we're going to face as a state. And in some cases, our water companies are really too small to have the capacity to do this. In that case, I think the commissioner can work with the company and coalitions of companies and make sure that we're doing good efforts here. But the other thing the commission can and does do is if you have a utility that does not have an adequate supply, then it's incumbent on the commission to make sure that they are not doing new line extension agreements out to areas that they don't have a sufficient supply to serve. The final critical role for the commission relative to water companies is, like I said earlier, we have 400 water and sewer companies throughout the state. Some of these are really too small to be viable and manage the challenges they face. In some cases, the grandfather started the company and his granddaughter or grandson's inherited and doesn't want to run it anymore, but nobody's looking to buy it. So the commission is starting to look much more directly at this question of how do you deal with the viability of some of these water companies? Do you find a larger company they can buy them out? Do you find several smaller companies to merge? Are they in a location where the local city or town can take over the service? That's an effort that's going to receive continuing attention. And in some cases, there is no easy answer, and we just have to figure out the best solution we can find. At this point, Jamie, what would you want to point to?
One or two more, yeah.
What do you have a question you want to see?
Russ K. and David W.
Okay, so Russ is asking a question. It's been one of my big topics lately, given the way this election's going, which is, what's the role of dark money? What's that all about? So dark money basically is the term we're using for money that isn't raised by the candidates themselves, but it comes in from independent expenditures. And depending how this is done, in some cases, they don't ever have to report who did it. So if we take as an illustration, I'm running for the Corporation Commission. In the Republican primary, we had 2 conservative candidates and 2 moderate candidates. So the solar industry came in and invested $500,000 for the moderate candidates. That was independent expenditure funding, but we actually know who it came from. We know the companies, the national solar firms that put that money in. And then $1.7 million came in that we have no idea officially of where it came from. It's the classic dark money. It doesn't have to be reported. And it came in to do attack ads on the moderates and to fund the conservative team. Everybody has assumed that Arizona Public Service was the source of that money. I mean, that's what all the media is saying that, all the experts in the industry are saying that. I'll accept that's true. I sat down with the CEO of Arizona Public Service and I didn't bother to ask, so I didn't force them to neither confirm nor deny, which is what they're doing. But at the end of what was a very good constructive meeting, I said, look, I don't want to leave here without you knowing that my campaign strategy in part is going to be, don't let APS buy this commission. Don't let the utilities buy their regulatory commission. You know, they smiled. They recognize that that's the situation. At this point, they put another $1.3 million in opposition to my fellow Democratic candidate, Sandra Kennedy. The best explanation of that is there was a poll a few weeks ago that showed her in the lead, and the other 3 of us tied for second. A couple of days later, $1.3 million was spent on highly distorted negative ads against her. So to me, this is an enormous issue. It's something that shouldn't happen. The commission has no authority over the dark funding in general, but we do have authority over utilities. And so what I have said is, as a commissioner, I will require our utilities to report any funding of this campaign. For the most part, utilities have stayed out of this race. They've said, we don't think it's appropriate for us to be getting involved in the elections of the people who will regulate us. That's partly why we created a clean election system. And now it's being, basically subverted by this. And so I've said my first action will be to require that reporting, which won't stop it, but it will make sure that you as the voters know what's happening. And that's something I think we have got to do. The fact that the current commission has not ordered this, to me, is very telling. It basically tells us they do not have the political will or courage to stand up to the state's largest utility and force them to go public. That should be of enormous concern to everyone, that we have an all one-party government that won't stand up to our largest utility. We've got to change that, and I'll be looking for your support to do that. I think we've gone long enough. We probably should wind up at this point. Once we stop, this will immediately be available on the internet. Folks can come and watch it in YouTube. The one part that I'll add in terms of my campaign is hopefully a number of you are watching are interested in what I'm saying. You are supportive of me and would like to help me be your commissioner. So I appreciate that. We're mostly trying to do our work through social media. So please, as soon as this is posted on YouTube, forward it to your friends, add a comment. Go to my Facebook page, Holway for Arizona, and like it. What you will see is a very robust debate. Like I said, last night I was in Payson talking to the Tea Party. I'm talking to everyone across the political spectrum in Arizona, and I welcome the debate and the arguments that come from that. These are the issues we have to have a good conversation about, and you, as the citizens of Arizona ratepayers, need to be engaged in that. I think if you look around, you'll see I'm about the only candidate having this kind of an open public dialogue, but I'm relying on social media to do it. So anything you can do to take my message and push it out to your network, and hopefully do it in a way that's compelling enough that as you send it to your friends, they will forward it to their friends. If we get to that 3rd degree of separation, then I'm starting to get the reach I need to be able to win this election. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support. Join us on Facebook. If we didn't get to your question, put it there and we will get to it. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.